My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 30, a costume designer for a regional theater in Portland, Oregon, and, if I'm honest, someone who has always been too trusting. I believe people when they say they'll show up. I believe promises that never had a chance. And on the night of my 18th birthday, that trait turned into kindling. Here's the moment that still rings in my bones. My stepmother, Denise, standing in our backyard under a string of party lights, holding the hem of the dress I'd spent 3 months stitching by hand. Silk crepe, tea-length, tiny seed beads sewn one by one while the rest of the house slept. She smiled wide and white and said, "Sweetie, this is a fire hazard." And then, before I could breathe, flames bloomed up the skirt like a cruel sunrise. My dress turned to smoke, and everyone clapped because Denise said it was an accident. It wasn't. And that night, that was the start of her downfall. Before I rewind, let me pull you in close, friend to friend. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Have you ever been humiliated by someone who should have protected you? I read every story, and tonight I want you to know you're not alone. Okay, let's go back. I grew up across the river from Vancouver, Washington, in a beige house with a tidy lawn and a family that looked better in pictures than in person. My dad, Michael Hart, managed a warehouse and believed in early bedtimes, clean cars, and keeping the peace. After my mom died when I was 12, peace meant not upsetting anyone, especially not Denise, the woman he married 2 years later. Denise arrived with a crisp bob, a glossy Instagram presence, and the kind of smile that never quite reached her eyes. She ran a home decor consulting business that mostly looked like shopping with other people's credit cards. In photos, she was all hostess poses and perfect angles. In the kitchen, she was the queen of, "Oh, Olivia, are you wearing that?" Her son Tyler, 1 year older than me, sported varsity jackets and an ego that filled rooms. He called my sewing grandma crafts. I called it breathing. Sewing was my inheritance. My mom taught me to pin seams while cookies cooled, to press every hem as if it were a promise. After she was gone, I stitched through the quiet because thread doesn't argue and fabric doesn't lie. That dress, the one Denise set on fire, was my portfolio piece. I'd planned to photograph it at golden hour, send the shots with my application to a design program in LA, and maybe, just maybe, leave the beige house behind. In the weeks before my birthday, Denise started circling my room like a moth. "Still working on that project, Liv?" She'd purr, brushing a sleeve with 2 fingers. You know, colleges don't want homemade. They want polish. I learned to lock my door when I left, to keep my beads in a cookie tin labeled lentils. Still, little things kept vanishing. A spool of thread here, a packet of needles there. I told Dad once. He rubbed the back of his neck and said, "Let's not make accusations." The party theme was golden, because Denise believes a color palette can erase tension. Gold paper fans, gold plastic cutlery, a cake dusted, in metallic luster spray that tasted like disappointment. She had invited just a few close friends, which meant a dozen women who wore wedges and said, "I die about mantel decor." I asked if we could do photos before cake, before grease, before frosting, before anyone could spill. Denise smiled. "Of course." The sun softened. I slipped into my dress and felt like I had finally stepped into my own skin. The silk held the curve of my waist. The skirt moved when I breathed. I added my mother's tiny pearl studs, a secret I'd kept in my jewelry box behind a false bottom, and walked downstairs. Denise was waiting on the patio, phone in hand, Tyler behind her with a smirk he thought was charming. "Spin," she chirped. I did. The skirt unfurled like a held breath, and then a candle tipped. Not near me. Not near the cake. Near the tulle swags Denise had draped, too close to the cheap citronella jars she'd insisted were ambient. In the commotion, hands. Voices, the scrape of a chair. Denise reached for me. I thought she was helping. Instead, she grabbed the hem, lifted it high like a pageant queen with a train, and swung the fabric toward the flicker. Flame loves silk. It licked, then leapt. I heard a sound I didn't recognize and realized it was me. Tyler whooped. One of. The wedge women gasped. "Oh my God!" as if she'd just seen a celebrity. "Dad!" Voice shaking. Dad froze. That's the part I replay when I can't sleep. His hands half raised, stalled between me and Denise, as if physics had changed and motion were optional. Denise yanked the dress free and flung it into the fire pit. The flames, greedy now, took everything. My hours, my stitches, my proof that I could be more than this house. Cameras clicked. "What a scare," someone trilled. "Can you imagine if it caught?" "It did," I said, but the lawn devoured my words. When the flames settled into coals, Denise draped an afghan around my shoulders like a benevolent queen. "Accidents happen," she announced to the patio, then to her phone's front-facing camera. "But our girl is safe, and that's what matters." She took a selfie with me in the corner, red-eyed and ash-dusted. The caption would read later, "When life tests your sparkle, shine brighter. Shut grateful mind family first." I went upstairs, shut my door, and sat on the carpet, the afghan itching against my neck. I waited for Dad's knock. It didn't come. Instead, my phone buzzed. Denise had tagged me. The photo made the fire look like an ambiance. Comments poured in from women I'd never met. "So glam." "You're a saint, Mama." "She's lucky to have you." Something inside me set like concrete. I wiped my face, pulled out a shoebox from under my bed, and lifted the false bottom. Under the pearls lay printouts, screenshots of Denise's DMs to one of my teachers, Olivia Kendall. "Be impulsive. Don't encourage this sewing obsession." Amazon orders that matched the supplies that went missing. A draft email she'd written to my dad about how vocational training would be better for me than college. Receipts. Not of money, of intent. I didn't have a plan yet. I had evidence. And a promise to myself that smelled like smoke. I would leave this house, and I would not come back small. Downstairs, the party restarted, as if fire were just another filter. Denise's laugh tinkled through the vents. Tyler told the story the way boys do when they think they're charming, recasting harm as humor. Dad's voice was quiet, a low river running past a rock. I pressed my palms to the carpet and felt the future humming below the floorboards. People think revenge begins with rage. Sometimes it begins with clarity, that cold, bright moment when you see exactly who someone is and realize you will never again hand them your softness as a weapon. That was my birthday gift to myself. Not cake. Not candles. Vision. And that night, the night Denise burned my dress and curated the ashes, became the first move in a very long game she didn't know she was playing. When I tell people now that my stepmother set my dress on fire, they sometimes blink and ask, "But why?" As if betrayal needs a neat little reason. The truth is, that night wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time she stopped pretending. To explain how we got there, I need to rewind to when my world shifted for the first time. My mom died when I was 12. Cancer. One of those quiet kinds that doesn't announce itself until it's already colonized the body like an invading army. She fought, and I watched her fight. But in the end, the doctors said words like comfortable, palliative, and acceptance. None of those words meant anything to me except gone. Mom had been the anchor in our little house in Vancouver. She wasn't perfect, but she was steady. She remembered birthdays. She left notes in lunchboxes, and she taught me to measure fabric as carefully as you measure flour. When she laughed, She tilted her head back like it was safe, to take up space. Without her, the house felt hushed. Dad tried, but grief makes some people louder and other people smaller. Dad shrank. 2 years later, Denise arrived. She came into our lives through church, of all places. Dad joined a grief support group, and there she was. Sympathetic smile, perfect manicure, stories about her own divorce that made her seem understanding. I think he wanted companionship more than love, a buffer against the silence. Within a year, they were married. That was when my home stopped being mine. Denise believed in appearances the way some people believe in religion. Fresh flowers on the table, throw pillows rotated by season, photos taken at flattering angles and posted within the hour. But behind the filters, she ran the house like a brand. Tyler, her son, became the golden boy. My dad became the wallet. And me? I was the complication. She'd say things like, "Oh, Olivia, you don't really want to wear that, do you?" Or, "Sweetie, college is expensive. Maybe a trade would be better." Always soft, always with a smile. But the undercurrent was sharp. You don't belong here the way we do. I tried to be invisible. I kept my head down, stayed in my room, and brought home straight A's. I thought if I was perfect enough, if I caused no ripples, Dad would see me, choose me, protect me. But Denise was clever. She'd intercept, whisper to him after dinner, "Olivia's been moody," or "She's wasting money on fabric again." He'd sigh, rub his temples, and tell me to just make things easier. Easier for whom? Not me. Tyler played his role well. Football, popularity, and loud laughter at the dinner table. He teased me constantly, my clothes, my hair, my nerdy sewing. Sometimes it was joking, but sometimes it was cruel. Once, when he wanted the car for a date, he told Denise I'd forgotten to feed the dog. I hadn't. But by the time I realized why she was glaring at me, the keys were already in his hand. What stung wasn't just the lie, it was that Dad believed him. I clung to sewing because it was the one thing Denise couldn't fully erase. She tried, though. Supplies disappeared. My machine accidentally got unplugged and fried a circuit. When I left patterns on the table, they were gone by morning. It was sabotage disguised as clumsiness, and every time I mentioned it, she tilted her head, lips curved just so. "Oh, Liv, you really think I'd do that? Maybe you just misplaced it. Don't be so dramatic." I started saving evidence. A thread here, a receipt there. It sounds paranoid for a teenager, doesn't it? But when you live with someone who makes you doubt your own eyes, proof becomes oxygen. By the time I was 17, I had a shoebox hidden in my closet with labeled envelopes. One for missing items. One for suspicious charges on Dad's card. One for printouts of her posts where she pretended to be crafting things I had made. Proof. Little scraps of sanity in a house built on gaslight. Meanwhile, Dad drifted further away. He wasn't cruel. He was absent. Too tired. Always, "Don't start." Denise made sure every conversation between us was filtered through her, like she was the translator for a language I no longer spoke. The balance of power in that house was clear. Denise held the reins, Tyler rode the horse, and I was expected to sweep the stable. But through it all, I kept building. Dresses, skirts, costumes for school plays. Tiny rebellions stitched into seams no one bothered to notice. My teachers noticed, though. One even pulled me aside senior year. "You have talent, Olivia," she said. "Real talent. You could go far." I believed her. Denise did not. When acceptance letters started trickling in from community colleges, art programs, even one from a design school in California, she intercepted the mail. I only found out because one envelope slid under my bedroom door instead of into her pile. I tore it open with shaking hands, an invitation to interview for a scholarship. My chance. Denise found me holding it and smiled like a cat. That program isn't practical. Your dad and I think you'd be better off staying local. Your dad and I, not you, not our family. Always a unit I wasn't part of. I went to the interview anyway, sneaking out in my thrifted blazer. I didn't get the scholarship, nerves probably, but I tasted freedom that day. A world where no one knew Denise's smile. No one measured. Me against Tyler. No one erased me, and I swore I'd find my way back there. The birthday dress was supposed to be my proof, my way of showing not just the design school, but myself, that I could turn grief and scraps into beauty. I worked on it after midnight, pinning seams under fairy lights, whispering my mother's advice to steady my hands. Measure twice, cut once. Believe what you see, not what they say. Denise hated it before it was even finished. She called it homemade, quaint, too ambitious, and every insult stitched me tighter to my goal. I didn't know then that she was planning something bigger than insults, that she would take the one thing I loved most and turn it to ash in front of everyone. That night wasn't an accident. It was an announcement. Denise wanted me small, invisible, erased. She had no idea she was setting the stage for my transformation. Looking back now, the signs were always there. Not in neon lights, not in one big explosion, but in the little daily cuts that leave scars deeper than bruises. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe I expected too much. That's what Denise wanted me to think. She was a master at planting doubt like weeds in a garden. You only notice when it's overgrown. The earliest memory? The night of Dad's promotion dinner. He'd been invited to a fancy steakhouse downtown, and Denise insisted it was a family occasion. I spent hours ironing my one decent dress. The navy one Mom bought me for my 8th grade choir concert. It was tight across my shoulders, but still presentable. When I came downstairs, Denise gave me a slow once-over and smiled sweetly. "Oh, Olivia, that's cute. But tonight's a bit more sophisticated. Why don't you let Tyler sit in? You can keep an eye on things here." I blinked. "But I thought you said it was family." "It is, dear. Tyler is family." The words landed like a slap. I wanted to protest, but Dad was already jingling his keys, kissing Denise's cheek, telling me not to wait up. The door closed, and I was left standing in my too-tight dress, feeling 12 years old all over again. That was the first time I noticed how Denise used the word family like a gate, sometimes wide open, slammed in my face. Another memory, Tyler's 16th birthday. Denise rented out a bowling alley, balloons, cake, DJ, the works. He strutted in like a king, and every cousin, every neighbor, every teammate cheered. Me? I wasn't on the guest list. When I showed up anyway, Denise leaned close and whispered, "Don't make this about you, Olivia. Let him have his moment." I ended up handing out pizza slices in the corner, invisible in the photos, the help at my own stepbrother's party. I told myself it didn't matter, that I was building something better. But inside, I was tallying every slight, every erasure. The biggest conflict started with money, or rather, with the way Denise controlled it. Dad's paycheck went into a joint account, and she managed it. With a zeal that would impress the IRS. I had a part-time job at a fabric store by then, just enough to cover supplies and a little savings. Every time I came home with a bag of cloth, she'd comment, "Oh, Liv, more rags? You should really be saving for something useful. Maybe a car, maybe rent. Dresses won't pay your bills." But Tyler's new sneakers, his endless school trips, his late-night pizza deliveries, no comments there. One evening, she actually took $20 from my wallet, claiming she'd used it to pay for household groceries. When I confronted her, she laughed. "Oh, sweetie, everything here belongs to all of us. Don't be selfish." Selfish. That was her favorite word for me. Selfish for wanting mail addressed to me. Selfish for needing Dad's time. selfish for existing in a house where she wanted no competition. Still, the tension never exploded. Not yet. Denise preferred the slow choke, not the dramatic blow-up. She'd smile at church potlucks, praising my cute little hobby, while at home she rolled her eyes at the scraps of fabric on my desk. The early conflict wasn't just between us, it was inside me. Every day I asked myself, should I fight? Or should I disappear? Should I call her out or swallow it down and focus on escape? Most days, I swallowed it. I stitched dresses instead of arguments. I poured anger into hems and seams. But the resentment was building, a silent reservoir behind a cracking dam. Then came the night of the school dance. I had made my own dress, burgundy satin, halter neck, the kind of gown that whispered grown-up even if you weren't quite there yet. I was proud. For once, I wanted to walk into a room and not feel like Denise's afterthought. As I twirled in front of the mirror, Denise appeared in the doorway, arms folded. "Where did you get that?" "I made it," I said, my voice cautious but steady. She tilted her head, lips curling. "You really think that's appropriate? It's too much. You'll embarrass yourself." My throat tightened. "It's the dance. Everyone's dressing up." "Everyone but you," she replied flatly. I wore it anyway. And when I walked into the gym, heads actually turned. Compliments followed me all night. For a moment, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I had power. But when I came home, the dress was gone, vanished from my closet. I searched, heart racing, until I found it stuffed into a garbage bag in the garage, wrinkled and smeared with grease. I dragged it out, tears blurring my eyes. When I confronted Denise, she raised an eyebrow. "Oh, was that yours? I thought it was one of the old costumes Tyler's friends left behind. You really need to keep track of your things." I realized then, this wasn't carelessness. It was calculated. She wanted to crush every spark of pride before it grew into a flame. That was the moment the conflict sharpened into clarity. Denise wasn't just dismissive. She was threatened. Threatened by my resilience, my talent, my refusal to be erased, and if there's one thing you need to know about me, it's this. I may bend, but I don't break. Not forever. I started keeping 2 wardrobes, one for her eyes, plain and muted, and one hidden, stitched with fire. Dresses no one saw but me, dreams she couldn't touch. The early signs of conflict weren't just the slights or the sabotage. They were the proof that war was coming, and I promised myself, when it did, I wouldn't be the one caught unprepared. Every family has that one story, the one memory you can't scrub clean, no matter how many years pass. For me, it was my 17th birthday, the night my stepmother lit a match to everything I thought I still had left with my family. I'd been working on the dress for months, secretly, carefully, in the hidden hours when Denise was busy gossiping on the phone or at Tyler's endless practices. Burgundy chiffon, hand-sewn beading, a fitted bodice lined with fabric I'd saved up for all summer. It wasn't just a dress. It was proof. Proof I was more than the girl they erased, more than the extra at family dinners. Dad had promised me something small. Cake, a few friends over, nothing big. But to me, that dress was the big thing. I imagined walking into my own party, looking like the version of me Denise had tried so hard to crush. The day came. My best friend Kayla came over early to help me with my hair. She gasped when I slipped into the dress. "Liv, you look like you're walking straight out of a movie premiere." I laughed, nervous but a little proud. For once, the mirror didn't make me flinch. Downstairs, voices carried from the kitchen, Denise's clipped tone, Dad's low replies, Tyler's laughter booming. I wanted to believe this birthday would be different. It wasn't. When I walked, Down the stairs, Tyler snorted loud enough for the whole house to hear. Whoa! Did we time travel back to prom 1985? His friends cackled. I bit my lip, kept walking, chin high. But Denise, she didn't laugh. She just stared. Her eyes swept over the beadwork, the satin, the way Dad blinked and actually looked. Surprised at me for the first time in months. Something hard flickered in her expression. Dinner passed in a blur. My cake arrived, candles glowing, but the compliments I'd hoped for never came. Dad was distracted. Denise kept pouring wine. Tyler smeared frosting on his friends' faces. And then, when Kayla and I went upstairs to change into sweats for movie night, I heard it. The unmistakable hiss of fabric meeting flame. We rushed back down, the smell hitting first. Sharp, chemical, final. In the driveway, Denise stood over the fire pit, a cigarette lighter in one hand, my birthday dress crumpled and blackening in the other. The beating popped like gunfire as it burned. I froze. What are you doing? My voice cracked, but it came out louder than I meant. Denise looked at me with that same thin smile she'd worn at Tyler's birthday, at Dad's dinners, at every little cut she'd ever delivered. Oh, Olivia. That thing? It was ridiculous. You can't cling to childish fantasies forever. Better to let it go. Kayla gasped beside me. She burned it. She actually burned it. I felt something inside me split, not a crack, a break. A clean, sharp break between the girl who tried to please and the woman who would never again beg for approval. Dad came outside at the commotion, his face pale as he saw the flames. But Denise was already moving toward him, laying a hand on his arm. It was just a dress, she said softly. You know how dramatic she can be. Just a dress. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to demand he see the ashes for what they were, proof of a war Denise had been waging for years. But Dad's silence told me everything. He wasn't going to fight for me. Not against her. So I stood there, the cold biting my bare shoulders, watching my birthday burn. That night, something hardened in me. Denise thought she had destroyed my pride, my hope, maybe even my future. But what she didn't know was that she'd given me clarity. You don't burn someone's dreams and expect them to keep playing nice. That was the night I stopped waiting to be included. I stopped hoping for love where there was only control. And I started planning. Not just an escape, but a reckoning. The girl in the driveway sobbed quietly into her best friend's shoulder. But the woman inside me whispered a promise. This isn't the end. This is the start of hers. People think betrayal feels like fire. It doesn't. It feels like ice. Cold, suffocating, numbing. That night, standing by the fire pit as my birthday dress turned to ash, I thought I would never feel warm again. Kayla stayed over, refusing to leave me alone. She held my hand as I sat on my bed, still in shock, staring at the faint scorch marks on my fingers where I had tried, uselessly, to pull the fabric from the flames. She whispered, "Liv, you can't let her do this to you anymore." I didn't answer. My throat was raw, but her words echoed. The next morning, I walked downstairs. Denise was at the table sipping coffee, scrolling her phone like nothing had happened. My father sat across from her, silent, newspaper shield raised between them, like a white flag. When Denise looked up and smiled at me, I saw it. Victory. She had expected me to break, to stomp my feet, to scream like a child. That way, she could dismiss me as dramatic. But I didn't give her the satisfaction. I sat down, folded my hands, and said nothing. For weeks, I carried that silence like armor. I went to school, to work, stitched dresses in secret again, but something was different. I wasn't just sewing anymore. I was planning. The breaking point wasn't just about the dress. It was about the truth I could no longer unsee. My stepmother wasn't going to stop. She wouldn't be satisfied until every spark of mine was snuffed out. And my father, whether blind or cowardly, wasn't going to protect me. I had only one option left: protect myself. That winter, the house grew colder. Denise's comments sharpened, her little sabotages more blatant. She forgot to tell me about the college recruiters calling. She moved my sewing machine to the garage under a tarp, calling it clutter. She even intercepted a scholarship letter, claiming she thought it was junk mail. I found it in the recycling bin, half torn, each act stacked like kindling, and deep inside, the ember of my fury glowed hotter. One night, I overheard her on the phone with a friend, laughing. "Oh, Olivia, she'll never make it. She's too weak. She'll end up in some dead-end job begging for scraps." Meanwhile, Tyler, he's the future of this family. I pressed my back against the wall, nails digging into plaster, and whispered to myself, "Never again." The breaking point wasn't one act of cruelty. It was the moment I realized she truly believed she had won, that I was powerless, that my future belonged to her whims, and that was the last time I let her write my story. I started documenting everything, every cruel comment, every stolen dollar, every missing letter. I took photos, kept receipts, and saved copies. Kayla helped me, sometimes slipping papers into her bag so Denise wouldn't notice. Because I wasn't just going to leave. I wasn't just going to survive, I was going to make Denise pay. That night by the fire pit hadn't been the end of my dreams. It was the start of her burning, and I was ready to strike the match. Revenge doesn't start with rage. Rage is noisy, messy, predictable. Denise expected rage from me. She wanted tantrums she could twist into evidence that I was unstable. What she didn't expect was silence, and silence gave me time to plan. I started small. I made duplicates of everything: school, letters, scholarship offers, pay stubs from my part-time job at the craft store. If Denise misplaced or accidentally shredded something, I already had a copy hidden at Kayla's house. I began journaling, not my feelings, but facts, dates, times, direct quotes of her insults. How many hours did she leave me waiting? For dinner while Tyler ate? Even the night she burned my dress, I wrote it down in detail, with Kayla's statement beside it like a witness report. Kayla asked one night, "What are you going to do with all this?" I looked at her, the plan forming in real time. "I'm going to make sure Denise can't touch me again, and when the time comes, I'll make sure everyone sees who she really is." The opportunity came faster than I thought. At school, my counselor, Mrs. Herrera, called me in. She'd noticed my grades slipping, not from lack of effort, but exhaustion. "Olivia, are things okay at home?" she asked gently. For the first time, I didn't deflect. I told her just enough: the burned dress, the intercepted mail, the way Denise froze me out of my own family. I didn't cry. I stayed calm, factual, deliberate. And Mrs. Herrera leaned in, nodding slowly. "Keep documenting," she said. "And when you're ready, we'll help you apply for the Emancipation Scholarship." That word, emancipation, was gasoline on my fire. I started working longer shifts at the store, saving every dollar. I told Denise it was for gas money, and she smirked, thinking I was running myself into the ground. Meanwhile, my savings grew. I built alliances quietly. My sewing teacher wrote me letters of recommendation. Kayla's parents promised me a place to stay if I ever needed to leave. Suddenly, even Mrs. Herrera connected me with a lawyer who specialized in guardianship disputes. And still, I played my role at home. I washed dishes. I smiled at Dad. I kept my voice calm when Denise threw little jabs over dinner. Because revenge isn't about striking first. It's about letting your enemy underestimate you long enough that when you hit, they never see it coming. The dress had been her statement piece. My silence would be mine. but silence is only a prelude. I wasn't planning just to escape. I wanted, Denise exposed, humiliated, the same way she humiliated me. And when her downfall came, it wouldn't be with fire in the driveway. It would be in front of everyone she wanted to impress. Revenge doesn't come in a single blow. It builds, piece by piece, like stitches in a hem. My first stitches were quiet ones. The night after Denise burned my dress, she bragged to her sister on the phone about how Olivia's ridiculous projects were just clutter she was teaching me to outgrow. She laughed, saying, "She'll thank me one day." I recorded it. Just one small clip, muffled through the wall, but her words were clear. Proof she hadn't just destroyed fabric, she'd destroyed intention. I sent the clip to Kayla, who texted back, "That's gold. Keep going." The next small win came at school. Denise had hidden another scholarship letter in the laundry basket, probably planning to toss it after forgetting. But this time, I already had a copy because I'd asked the counselor to email everything directly to me. When I handed Dad the letter in front of Denise, his eyes flickered with guilt. "Why didn't I see this?" he asked. Denise's smile didn't crack, but her hand tightened on her coffee mug. "Maybe it got lost." "In the shuffle," she said. But for the first time, I saw the panic, tiny, sharp, behind her calm exterior. It was working. My next win was social. Denise thrived on reputation. Church potlucks, neighborhood barbecues, PTA meetings. She liked being seen as the perfect stepmom. So I started talking. Not accusations, just carefully placed truths. When Mrs. Ellis from church asked how my birthday went, I smiled sweetly and said, "Oh, it was unforgettable. My stepmother even burned my dress. Said it was better that way." The woman's jaw dropped. Word spread fast in small communities. By Sunday evening, 2 different neighbors had pulled me aside to whisper, "Is that true? Did she really?" I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I just let the silence answer for me. And the best part? Denise noticed. She started getting fewer invitations. People didn't linger around her as much. At the next PTA meeting, I overheard someone mutter, "That's the one who burned her stepdaughter's birthday dress." The cracks widened. Kayla and I celebrated each small win with milkshakes at the diner. She'd grin and say, "Brick by brick, Liv. You're dismantling her house of cards." But the sweetest moment came one Friday night. Tyler had a basketball game, and Denise was in full queen bee mode, bragging to parents about how she managed everything so seamlessly. She asked me to fetch her jacket from the car. I took my time. When I returned, she was mid-story, laughing too loudly, basking in the spotlight. That's when I leaned down and said, just loud enough for the circle to hear, "Found your jacket, Denise. Careful. Don't set this one on fire." The laughter died. Every pair of eyes flicked to her. She went scarlet. For once, she didn't have a comeback. I handed her the jacket, calm, smiling. Small win? Maybe. But in that moment, I felt the power shift. She knew it. I knew it. And so did everyone watching. She had burned my dress to prove she could control me. But I was already burning down her image, her reputation, her illusion of perfection. And the best part? I hadn't even started. The real revenge yet. These were just sparks. The firestorm was still to come. Small wins are satisfying, but the big strike? That's the one you dream about at night. The one that makes every bruise, every insult, every humiliation finally make sense. For me, that strike came at Tyler's senior awards banquet. Denise had been bragging for months that Tyler was the golden child, destined for scholarships, destined to make the family proud. She had planned the banquet like it was her own coronation, a custom suit for Tyler, salon hair for herself, rented decorations to make the family look successful. She even forced my dad to contribute, pretending it was all for Tyler's future. What she didn't know was that while she was polishing Tyler's halo, I was polishing my evidence. By then, my file was thick, the audio recordings of her mocking me, admitting to burning my dress and dismissing me as weak, the intercepted scholarship letters, some still crumpled, with dates showing she had hidden them. A log of her financial manipulations, times she skimmed money from my father's account, for her own projects. And the crown jewel, a sworn statement from Kayla's parents, confirming they witnessed Denise belittle me, sabotage my education, and even brag about it. I wasn't going to scream at Denise in the kitchen. I wasn't going to throw water in her face at dinner. No, her cruelty thrived in private. My revenge would thrive in public. The banquet hall glittered with string lights and cheap centerpieces. Parents whispered, students laughed nervously, in their suits and gowns. Denise floated around like royalty, her hand glued to Tyler's arm, telling anyone who would listen how hard she had worked to get him here. When it was time for the awards, I slipped out. I wasn't there to clap politely. I was there to end her reign. While Denise and Tyler soaked in applause, I walked down the hallway to the principal's office. In my bag was a folder, copies of every piece of evidence, neatly labeled, stapled, impossible to dismiss. Mrs. Herrera, my counselor, was waiting. We had arranged this moment for weeks. She looked at me with steady eyes and asked, "Are you sure?" I thought of my burned dress, of the cold laughter, of 12 years of silence at the dinner table. "Yes," I said. "It's time." By Monday morning, everything detonated. The principal received my file. The school board saw how Denise had sabotaged my scholarships and tried to erase my future. The bank statements and receipts I'd saved went straight to my father's lawyer, showing Denise's budget adjustments were more like theft. And the audio recordings? Mrs. Herrera had them transcribed, shared them with the PTA president, and within hours the whispers started. At first, Denise didn't know. She strutted into church that Sunday with her pearls shining, ready to brag about Tyler's banquet. But the looks she got weren't admiration. They were pitiful, disgust, curiosity. By the time the pastor's wife avoided her handshake, Denise's smile cracked. And when my father's lawyer served her papers, legal separation, financial investigation, her smile vanished completely. The execution wasn't loud. I didn't scream. I didn't gloat. I just let the truth speak louder than any fire she could start. The woman who burned my dress to prove her power was now the one being burned, by her own words, her own lies, her own choices. And for the first time in years, I felt warm again. Revenge doesn't end with the strike. It lingers. It seeps into the cracks left behind, reshaping everything in its path. For Denise, the aftermath began in whispers. At church, the same women she'd once ruled with gossip and potluck pies now avoided her pew. At the grocery store, people she used to corner with her helpful advice suddenly checked out in different lanes. The phone calls stopped. The invitations dried up. Her kingdom of image crumbled silently, piece by piece, and then came the legal blows. My father, slow to act, slower to see, finally had no choice. The lawyer presented the evidence, the missing scholarship letters, the mismanaged funds, and the recordings of Denise, mocking me. Even Dad's stubborn loyalty couldn't survive facts stamped with signatures and dates. One evening, I walked past their bedroom and heard shouting. My father's voice, angrier than I'd ever heard it. Denise's high, panicked tone. The words were muffled, but the rage was clear. That night, she slept on the couch. By the end of the month, she was served with separation papers. Tyler felt the ripple, too. His basketball coach pulled him aside after school. I overheard the words, conduct, family reputation, distractions. Tyler stormed out of practice, his sneakers squeaking against the gym floor. For once, his anger wasn't aimed at me, it was aimed at her. Kayla and I sat on her porch swing one night, listening to cicadas hum in the sticky Missouri summer. She nudged me and said, "You realize you did it, right? You didn't just survive her, you beat her." I wanted to believe it, but part of me still carried the ache of birthdays ruined, of years spent being treated as a shadow in my own home. Revenge had balanced the scales, but scars don't vanish. Still, I saw the shift. At school, teachers congratulated me quietly. "Good for you, Olivia. Not everyone is brave enough to speak up." At church, Mrs. Ellis squeezed my hand and whispered, "We all knew something was wrong. Now we know for sure." Even my father changed, tentatively, awkwardly, but undeniably. He started asking me questions about my day, listening for answers instead of dismissing them. He offered rides when I worked late, even stayed awake until I got home. He wasn't perfect, but for the first time, he was trying. Denise, meanwhile, shrank. No more pearls, no more bright lipstick, just sweatpants and sunglasses, rushing through errands, pretending not to hear the murmurs that followed her. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Her downfall was visible everywhere, and she knew it. The girl she locked out of family dinners, the girl she tried to erase with fire, had burned her reputation to the ground without lifting a single match. And as I watched her crumble, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't just punished Denise. It had freed me. They say revenge leaves you empty, that it poisons you as much as the person you're fighting. But standing there, looking at Denise's crumbling facade, I didn't feel poisoned. I felt lighter. Not because I'd destroyed her, but because I'd finally stopped letting her destroy me. I was Olivia Bennett, 17 years old. A girl who once believed that silence was safer, that being overlooked was easier than fighting. A girl who once watched her stepmother burn her birthday dress and thought it meant she was powerless. But now I knew the I truth. Power isn't about titles, or who controls the checkbook, or who gets the loudest applause at church. Power is in refusing to stay small. Power is in turning humiliation into strength and ashes into fuel. My father never fully apologized. Denise never admitted guilt. Tyler never stopped sulking. But their reactions didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that I reclaimed my voice, that I showed them, and myself, that I was more than the victim they tried to make me. Denise burned my dress, but she didn't burn me. I built a future she couldn't touch, and in that truth, I found something far more valuable than revenge. Freedom. If you've listened this far, I want you to hear me clearly. Revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about balance. It's about proving to the people who hurt you that they don't own your story anymore. So let me ask you, have you ever had someone try to erase you, belittle you, or bury you? And did you ever find a way to rise back stronger? Please share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your story matters. And if this story spoke to you, don't forget, hit like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that being underestimated is sometimes the best weapon of all, because sometimes the sweetest revenge is living a life so bright, the people who tried to dim it can't even look your way.